I hope you're joking, Anna. There's no way anyone would invest in that ridiculous app idea of yours. The words hit me like a slap. Calm and casual, just like that. Derek's smirk was as sharp as ever. It was lunchtime in the open-plan office cafe, the scent of freshly brewed coffee swirling around us. I could feel a few curious glances from colleagues, but Derek didn't care. He loved being the loudest voice in the room, the center of attention. I didn't say a word at first. Instead, I slid my tablet across the table, showing him the prototype I'd been working on for months. Look closer, Derek. It's not ridiculous, it's smart, scalable, and I have solid backing lined up. He scoffed, flipping the tablet around as if I was showing him a child's doodle. Anna, seriously, you're chasing a pipe dream. That app won't make a dime. Stick to your spreadsheets and leave innovation to people who actually know what they're doing. Real quick, if you enjoy stories where karma finally clocks in, hit subscribe. We've got a lot of those around here. Let's continue. I swallowed my rising frustration. Derek had been my older brother's closest friend since college, practically family. That made his words sting twice as hard. My name is Anna Whitman, 34, tech entrepreneur, and a woman who doesn't let dismissal stop her. Your doubts don't scare me, I said quietly, voice steady despite the heat rising inside. You'll see. That was the moment when everything started to unravel. Less than a week later, my brother Jake pulled me aside after dinner at our parents' house. His face was tight, the casual warmth I was used to replaced by something colder. Anna, you need to be careful with Derek. I frowned. What do you mean? Jake looked away. He's been talking behind your back, saying you're wasting your time. Worse, he's been spreading rumors at the firm he runs. That startup you're building, he's telling people it's doomed to fail. It felt like the air had been sucked from the room. I knew Derek's company, Edge Solutions, was one of the biggest tech firms in the city, and my brother's friend was their CEO. If Derek controlled opinions in our circle, my startup's reputation could be crushed before it even launched. I asked, why would he do that? Jake shrugged helplessly. Jealousy, I don't know, but it's serious, Anna. You've got enemies in places you didn't expect. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my small apartment, the city lights flickering through the blinds. The weight of betrayal was suffocating. How had Derek, someone I once trusted, become the biggest obstacle to my dream? The next day at the office, I forced a smile while my team buzzed with excitement about the upcoming investor meetings. But the pit in my stomach wouldn't fade. I could almost hear Derek's mocking voice whenever I voiced an idea. Then, the crushing blow came during a strategy call. My phone buzzed with a message from Jake. I read it once, twice, then my heart sank. Derek's been undermining your contracts. He's got a meeting with one of your key investors today. Watch out. I clenched my jaw and sent a quick reply. Thanks for the heads up. Anna, my assistant Sophie, asked gently, noticing my tense expression. Everything okay? I forced a laugh. Just business drama, nothing I can't handle. But inside, I was already plotting my next move. This wasn't just about a startup anymore. This was personal. Derek had crossed a line, one I was determined to erase. How do you fight someone who has all the power, connections, and the audacity to mock your vision? How do you turn the tables when the game feels rigged? That question burned in my mind as I stared down the city skyline. I wasn't going to let Derek win. Not now, not ever. Derek's words didn't just sting, they echoed through every conversation, every corner of my world. It wasn't just a casual insult anymore. It was an orchestrated campaign to discredit me, and I was starting to see the full extent of it. It began with small, almost invisible attacks. An email from a potential investor that suddenly went silent. A cancelled meeting with a major client without explanation. Then the whispering started, quiet but poisonous. Anna's idea is flaky. Derek says she's reckless. It's only a matter of time before she fails. One afternoon, I met with Jason, my lead developer, in the cramped meeting room that doubled as our war room. He looked exhausted. Anna, I don't know how to say this, but I caught a couple of emails between Derek and some clients. He's actively warning them off working with us. Jason, a lanky guy with a knack for code and a quieter voice, looked uneasy. He even offered discounts on his own platform to steal our leads. It's aggressive. I nodded, keeping my voice low but firm. This isn't just competition anymore. It's sabotage. That same day, I ran into Maya in the hallway, our Derek's strategist and the kind of woman who never sugar-coated reality. Derek's got a habit of crushing startups like ours under his heel, she said, flipping through her tablet. He calls it pruning the weak branches to keep his empire strong. Maya's words sent a chill down my spine. Derek had a reputation for being ruthless, but hearing it straight from someone in the trenches made it real. The phrase, pruning the weak branches, stuck with me. It was like a dark mantra he repeated to justify his cruelty. There was something else about Derek that made his venom so toxic. His trade Derek black leather jacket. Wherever he went, that jacket seemed to embody his arrogance, a symbol of the untouchable kingpin of the tech world. I remembered seeing it first at a startup conference years ago, his presence looming large, dominating every room. And Derek loved to remind people of his power with a smug catchphrase he often used. In this game, you either lead or get led. Hearing that line again now made my blood boil. I was neither his follower nor his victim. My closest ally through all of this was my sister, Emma. She was a corporate lawyer, sharp and principled, with zero tolerance for injustice. When I told her about Derek's tactics, she didn't mince words. Anna, this is more than childish rivalry. He's crossing legal lines. If he's interfering with your contracts and defaming your business, we have grounds to fight back. Emma's calm confidence gave me a rare glimmer of hope. She reminded me that while Derek held power now, he wasn't invincible. But the weight of the situation hit me hardest at home. My mother, always the peacemaker, tried to soothe the growing storm. Anna, maybe you should find a way to settle this quietly. You don't want to burn bridges with your brother's best friend. I shook my head. Mom, this isn't about keeping peace anymore, it's about survival. And Derek's not just a friend anymore, he's the enemy. Jake, meanwhile, was caught in his own struggle. I overheard a tense phone call where he pleaded, Derek, Anna's family. Don't make this personal. Derek's cold reply, overheard through the thin walls, was chilling. Personal, this is business. I'm not here to play nice. That was the moment I realized how deep the betrayal ran. Not just between me and Derek, but within the family circle that once felt safe. One evening, at a small dinner with Emma and Jake, the conversation turned serious. Emma leaned in, voice low but resolute. Anna, you can't just sit back and take this. You have to fight, but you need a plan. We'll help. Jake nodded reluctantly. Derek's underestimated you, he's made mistakes already. I looked at them both, feeling the weight of their support and the fire growing inside me. I'm not the person who backs down, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. But even with allies and resolve, the power imbalance was glaring. Derek's reach was vast. His company had investors, media contacts, and a reputation that could drown out a whisper from a newcomer like me. Yet the thought of surrendering never crossed my mind. If anything, Derek's arrogance fueled a quiet determination in me. He thought I was weak, naive, a woman with nothing but dreams. But he hadn't met the real me. That night, as I stared at the city lights again, the question wasn't whether I would fight back. It was how. How do you take down someone who thinks they're untouchable? How do you turn his own power against him? The answer was beginning to form. And with Emma's legal sharpness, Jake's insider knowledge, and my team's grit, I was ready to start the fight Derek never saw coming. That night's sleep was elusive. My mind raced with every possible angle, every tiny detail Derek could use against me, and how I might turn it around. I sat at my desk, the glow from my laptop screen illuminating the cramped corner of my apartment where I spent most nights these days. I kept my coffee mug close, untouched but still warm from earlier, as if its heat could somehow transfer to my resolve. I leaned back and thought about the first time I'd truly believed in my idea, when it was just a scribble in a notebook during a rainy afternoon at the coffee shop on 5th. It was a small moment, but it changed everything. I remembered the excitement, the rush of possibility. And I remembered Derek's laughter the first time I told him about it, that cold, dismissive sound that still echoed in my ears. Flashback 2 years ago. I was fresh out of a corporate job, eyes bright with ambition. Over a casual dinner with Jake and Derek, I had laid out my vision. It's going to disrupt how people manage their time and productivity, I said, cheeks flushed with excitement. A simple, intuitive app that adapts to your needs. Derek had leaned back in his chair, smirking. Anna, you're dreaming, you don't have the experience or the network. Why waste your energy? Jake had exchanged a glance with me, silent but supportive. But Derek's words hit me hard. I had brushed it off then, convinced I could prove him wrong. Back to the present. That memory fueled something fierce inside me now. I wasn't the same person anymore, naive or easily discouraged. I was a woman with a mission, and Derek's arrogance had lit the fire. The next day, I met with Emma at a quiet cafe downtown. The kind with exposed brick walls, soft jazz playing in the background, and a hint of cinnamon in the air. Emma was already there when I arrived, her laptop open, a stack of legal papers beside her. Her eyes, sharp behind tortoiseshell glasses, met mine with a mix of determination and empathy. "We need to build a case," she said firmly. "Derek's interference is deliberate and damaging. I've started gathering info on his recent activities, email trails, witness statements, even some financial irregularities in his company's dealings." I nodded, absorbing every word. "So we have a way to strike back." Emma smiled briefly. "More than that, we're going to dismantle his empire piece by piece." Just then, Jason walked in, carrying a worn notebook filled with scribbles and code snippets. "I've been monitoring some suspicious activity on our servers," he said, sliding into the seat beside me. "Looks like someone's been trying to hack our system, pretty much the same time Derek's been ramping up his efforts to sabotage us." Maya joined us moments later, carrying her tablet, eyes bright with determination. "I've compiled a report on Derek's derecating campaigns. There's clear evidence he's spreading false information about our product online. Fake reviews, misleading ads, you name it." The room felt charged, a small army forming in the shadows. Each of us had pieces of a puzzle that, when combined, could turn the tide. Later that week, I sat with Jake in our parents' living room, the air heavy with unspoken tension. The framed photos on the walls, the family vacations, birthdays, graduations, reminded me how much had changed. Jake rubbed his temples, exhaustion etched into his face. "I hate this, Anna. Derek's not just your enemy anymore. He's tearing our family apart," he said quietly. I reached across the coffee table, squeezing his hand. "We'll get through this, I promise you." Jake looked up, searching my eyes. "Do you really think we can beat him? He's got resources, connections." I let a slow smile form, a calm but fierce glint in my gaze. "I don't just think it, I know it." That night, alone in my apartment again, I pulled out a small box from beneath my bed. Inside was a flash drive containing encrypted files, months of careful research, notes, and evidence collected quietly, piece by piece. A project I'd kept secret, even from my closest allies until now. I had learned that playing Derek's game meant being smarter, faster, and more ruthless, but in a way that wouldn't break me. I had spent nights reaching out to contacts, former employees of Edge Solutions, and even an investigative journalist who had a reputation for exposing corporate scandals. Each message I sent was a step in the shadow dance I was about to lead. The real plan was no longer about survival. It was about turning Derek's arrogance into his downfall. To do that, I needed to stay calm, patient, and one step ahead. As I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "It's time to act. Are you ready?" I stared at the screen for a long moment, the weight of what was coming pressing down on me. This was no longer a game of ideas or business. It was a battle for justice, respect, and my future. I typed back simply, "Let's do this." But deep inside, a question lingered, one that wouldn't go away. What would it cost me to take down a man who once called himself family, and was I prepared to pay that price? The moment to strike felt both thrilling and terrifying. For months, I had been the quiet observer, the strategist behind the scenes, and now everything was poised to unfold. I met with Emma, Jason, Maya, and Jake late one evening in the conference room of our modest office. The hum of the city outside was a distant reminder of the world we were about to shake. Emma laid out the plan with surgical precision. "First, we expose the illegal tactics Derek's been using, his attempts to sabotage your investors and hack your systems. I've already secured a confidential source within his company who's willing to testify." Jason tapped on his laptop. "We've set up countermeasures. We're monitoring every digital move they make. If they try to hack us again, we catch it live and trace it back to them." Maya grinned, sliding over a report filled with screenshots of fake reviews and misleading ads. "I've contacted a few journalists who specialize in tech fraud. They're interested, but they need solid proof, and we've got it." Jake folded his arms, looking at me with a mix of hope and caution. "We hit him where it hurts, his investors, his reputation, his control. But we have to keep it clean. No mistakes." I nodded. I want to see Derek's smug face when he realizes his empire is built on quicksand. A few days later, the first move was in motion. I watched from my desk as the story went live. A detailed exposé on Derek's illegal interference with competing startups, backed by concrete evidence and insider testimonies. The headlines spread like wildfire. "Whitman startup smashes industry giant's facade," one read. Within hours, Derek's carefully constructed image began to crack. I imagined him pacing his sleek office, that black leather jacket slung over the back of his chair as the news hit. I pictured the disbelief, the scrambling calls to PR teams, the furious attempts to control the damage. I couldn't help but smirk. Then came the emails, one from a top investor. "We need to reconsider our involvement." Another from a client. "Your product shows promise, but we're wary given recent developments." Derek's phone calls went unanswered. His power faltered like a candle flickering in a storm. One afternoon, Maya burst into my office, eyes wide with excitement. "You've got to see this. Derek just responded on social media, trying to spin the narrative, but it's backfiring spectacularly." On her screen, Derek's usual confident tone was replaced by defensive posts and thinly veiled threats. His followers started questioning him openly. The tide was turning, but Derek wasn't the only one to react oddly. I received a message from Sophie, my assistant, in a whispery tone. "Anna, Derek's been calling the office demanding to speak with you." It sounds desperate. I let the phone ring twice before answering, voice steady. "Derek." His usual arrogance faltered. "Anna, this is madness. You don't have to do this. Let's talk." I laughed softly, a sound edged with satisfaction. "Talk. You were the one who mocked my vision, undermined my work, and betrayed our family's trust." Derek's silence spoke volumes. I could almost see the storm behind his calm facade. "Consider this your wake-up call," I said. "I'm not the woman you thought I was." The line went dead. Over the next week, every move Derek made felt like a desperate scramble. One of his trusted lieutenants, who I'd quietly approached weeks earlier, turned whistleblower. He confirmed financial mismanagement and under-the-table deals that could bring Derek's company to its knees. During a team lunch, Jason joked, "Guess who's not laughing now? Leather jacket man." Maya added with a sly grin, he should have known better than to poke the bear. Even Jake, who had struggled with the family rift, allowed himself a quiet smile. "You've turned the tables, Anna. Proud of you." But I knew better than to celebrate too soon. Derek was dangerous, and pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. Then came the day we waited for, the board meeting at Edge Solutions. Emma and I sat side by side in a sleek conference room, surrounded by lawyers and investors. The evidence was laid bare: documented sabotage, hacking attempts, financial misconduct. I watched as the room shifted, eyes turning away from Derek, whispers growing louder. His defenses crumbled under the weight of truth. One investor leaned forward, voice firm. "We cannot support a company led by someone involved in such unethical behavior." Derek's face twisted, a mixture of fury and defeat. I felt no sympathy. This was the reckoning. As we walked out of the building, Emma whispered, "You did it." I glanced at her, eyes steady. "No, we did it, but this is just the beginning." The taste of victory was sweet, but tempered with the knowledge that Derek's fall was far from over. That night, I allowed myself a rare moment of levity. Sitting with my team in the office kitchen, I raised my coffee mug to the downfall of the leather jacket. Jason chuckled. "Here's to smart revenge." Maya smiled, and to never underestimating the little guy. But as I lay in bed later, the city lights outside casting long shadows, one thought lingered. How much more was Derek willing to lose before he finally admitted defeat? The days following the boardroom showdown were a whirlwind, but the real battle was just beginning. Derek was no fool. He knew that losing the board was only the start of his troubles. I braced myself for the storm he would try to unleash, but I also knew Emma had built a fortress of legal evidence no one could ignore. One morning, Emma called me early. "Anna, we've got everything: emails, recorded calls, witness testimonies. It's airtight." I ran my fingers over the pile of documents she handed me when we met at the firm's sleek downtown office later that day. The pages were dense with facts, figures, and damning proof, each one a nail in Derek's coffin. "What's our next move?" I asked, voice steady despite the tension knotting in my stomach. Emma's eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. "We file a formal lawsuit for defamation, breach of contract, and corporate sabotage. It will force a public reckoning." I nodded. "Good, let's make sure the world knows who he really is." The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the tech community. Suddenly, Derek was no longer the untouchable titan. He was a defendant, forced to defend his actions in the harsh glare of public scrutiny. At a press conference, Emma stood beside me, calm and composed. "Our evidence clearly shows systematic attempts by Derek Harris and Edge Solutions to undermine a competitor through illegal means," she announced, voice firm. "We believe justice will prevail." The media frenzy was immediate. Headlines splashed across every major outlet. Tech CEO accused of sabotage, startup founder takes down industry giant, corporate ethics in question at Edge Solutions. Derek's reaction was a mix of fury and desperation. I heard through a contact that he was avoiding public appearances, canceling meetings, and shutting down social media accounts. His once mighty empire was beginning to crumble. During a tense family dinner Jake shared, "Mom's worried about the fallout. Derek's been distant, refusing to return calls. It's not just business anymore, it's personal." I understood that all too well. Derek's arrogance had blinded him to one truth: no amount of power could protect him from consequences. One afternoon, Sophie came to me with a concerned look. "Anna, Derek's legal team sent a cease and desist letter demanding you drop the lawsuit or face counterclaims." I smiled thinly. "Let them try." Emma added, "They're bluffing, their evidence won't stand in court." As the legal battle intensified, I spent long hours preparing with Emma, reviewing every detail, anticipating Derek's moves. The courtroom felt like a battlefield, but I was no longer the underdog. One day, during a deposition, Derek's arrogance cracked. I watched as his facade faltered under Emma's pointed questions and the overwhelming evidence. His attempts to deflect and deny were met with sharp rebuttals that left him grasping for control. At a rare moment alone, Jake confided, "I never thought I'd see Derek like this. He looks defeated." I nodded. This is what happens when you underestimate the strength of those you try to break. The turning point came when a key witness, a former Edge Solutions executive, testified about the company's internal sabotage plans. The courtroom was silent as the revelations unfolded, each statement another blow to Derek's credibility. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, eager for any hint of the outcome. I stood beside Emma, feeling a surge of pride but reminding myself to stay grounded. "Justice isn't just about winning," Emma said quietly. "It's about holding people accountable." Derek's final attempt to salvage his reputation was to propose a settlement, but it was clear he was cornered. I refused. If I backed down now, everything we'd fought for would be meaningless. The last time I saw Derek before the trial's conclusion, he was a shadow of the man he once was, avoiding eye contact, shoulders slumped beneath the weight of impending ruin. As the judge read the verdict in our favor, a calm resolve washed over me. This was more than a legal victory. It was a reclaiming of power and dignity. But even as the courtroom emptied and cameras clicked, a question lingered. How far would Derek fall before he finally admitted defeat, and could he rise again from the ashes he had ignited? Derek's world unraveled faster than anyone expected. The courtroom victory wasn't just a win on paper, it triggered a cascade of consequences that left him gasping for air. First, the financial blow hit hard. Investors pulled out, contracts evaporated, and banks froze his accounts. News leaked about asset seizures, luxury cars, properties, even his prized black leather jacket, which had become a symbol of his reign. It was auctioned off quietly, a bitter reminder of how far he'd fallen. The jacket, once worn like armor, now sold for a fraction of its worth, as if stripping away his identity piece by piece. Then came the media storm. Headlines no longer whispered about his genius, they screamed about his downfall. Social media turned into a relentless courtroom of public opinion. Former allies distanced themselves, afraid their own reputations would be tarnished by association. His carefully cultivated image was reduced to a cautionary tale about arrogance and corruption. Late-night talk shows and tech blogs dissected his mistakes with merciless glee. The man who once commanded rooms now became the subject of ridicule. Family ties crumbled too. Jake confided in me that Derek's closest relatives had stopped answering his calls. The man who once boasted of loyalty and legacy was now isolated, abandoned by those he once claimed were his foundation. Even the old friends who used to toast to his success now crossed the street to avoid him. I saw the mental toll in the faint lines around Derek's eyes during a rare chance encounter at a tech conference months later. His confident swagger was gone, replaced by a hollow stare and quiet desperation. Rumors circulated that he had started seeing therapists, but nothing could undo the damage he'd done to himself. I overheard whispers that he'd become a ghost in his own company, delegating everything, barely speaking in meetings. His sharp tongue dulled to silence. In stark contrast, my life was moving forward with a steady grace. The startup that Derek tried to crush was now thriving. Investors who once hesitated were now eager partners. Our team had grown, energized by the victory and the promise of the future. Our office hummed with purpose, the air alive with innovation and hope. At a celebratory dinner with Emma, Jake, Jason, Maya, and Sophie, I raised a glass. To resilience, to justice, and to knowing that strength isn't about tearing others down, it's about lifting yourself up. Jason smiled warmly. Here's to beating the leather jacket at his own game. Maya laughed, clinking her glass with mine. And to proving that brains and heart can outlast arrogance. Jake looked at me with quiet admiration. You didn't just survive, you thrived. Sophie added softly, and you showed us all what it means to fight with integrity. But beneath the triumph, I understood the complexity of it all. Derek's downfall wasn't just a personal victory, it was a lesson in power, pride, and the cost of betrayal. In the end, his last words to me echoed in my mind, once sharp and cruel, now a hollow whisper. You'll never make it. I smiled softly, knowing that I already had. And with that, I realized something even more important. I wasn't just reclaiming my future. I was building one no one could take away. The dust had settled, but my journey was far from over. The fight against Derek had changed me, shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more determined. I wasn't just the woman who had saved her startup. I was a leader who understood the true meaning of resilience and justice. One morning, I received an unexpected call from the board of a major tech incubator. Anna, we'd like to invite you to join our advisory panel, the voice said warmly. Your story and success are exactly what the next generation of entrepreneurs needs. It was an opportunity I hadn't sought but was ready to embrace. Helping others navigate the treacherous waters I'd survived became a new purpose. At the incubator's sunlit office, I met young founders eager for guidance. Their eyes shone with hope, dreams still untainted by cynicism. I shared my story, not the sensational headlines, but the lessons learned in every setback and every quiet moment of doubt. One evening, as I left the building, I noticed a small, worn leather jacket hanging on a coat rack near the entrance. I smiled to myself, an ironic reminder of the past, now replaced by something far more meaningful. Back at my startup's headquarters, we established a new ethics department, championed by Maya and Emma, ensuring that fairness and integrity stayed at the heart of everything we did. It was a legacy I was proud to build. In quieter moments, Jake and I often reflected on the tumultuous journey. You changed the game, Anna, he said once, his voice filled with pride. You took a painful betrayal and turned it into a victory for all of us. I nodded, thinking about the long nights, the doubts, and the unyielding fire inside me. It wasn't just about beating Derek. It was about proving to myself that no one controls my worth but me. As the sun set over the city skyline, I stood by the window of my office, a small, framed quote on my desk catching the fading light. Strength grows in the moments when you think you can't go on but keep going anyway. A gentle smile crossed my lips. The past was a chapter closed, but the future was unwritten, and it was mine to create.